Okay, so here we are. We're here in Vietnam. I've never been before. It's been an awesome, first trip here. And we're going to talk a little bit about your story and what's happening with Neutronpay, Bitcoin Beach, Vietnam. So let's start with a little bit of your journey into the Bitcoin world. Was it Albert who orange pilled you?
Yes, it was Albert, actually. So the story goes, so Albert and I, if you don't already know, so we used to work together. So we've known each other for about 10 or 12 years, right? So we're both from Vancouver. We both worked at a company called Hyperwallet. So Hyperwallet was a payments company, which later then sold to PayPal, and so now it's called kind of like PayPal Mass Payouts. PayPal tried to build their own, and they just decided to go on an acquisition spree, right? So I was on the sales team there. Albert was on the IT infrastructure team. He was new to Vancouver, so he was originally from Calgary. And I remember him walking around the office, and I was like, "Who's this guy? This guy needs some friends." I could tell, he's new guy in a new city. I was like, "This guy needs a friend." So I think we went for lunch, and I think we went for dinner too. And I think some of our very early conversations were about Bitcoin, and so started.
So when was this roughly?
So this would have been 2012, 2013, something around there. Yeah, so pretty early. But I mean, I didn't buy Bitcoin then. It was just a little bit of education, right? A little bit of educating me on Bitcoin. And then I remember him, he didn't go into it too much. Well, he did. He went into his ATM story a bit, but I remember he'd be at the Hyperwallet office, right? And we're a startup. We're maybe like 50 people. And he would be, doing the IT infrastructure stuff, and then he'd be answering customer support for his ATMs, his two ATMs that he had deployed. And that ran, that obviously he couldn't do that forever. And I remember one day, we dove a little bit even more into Bitcoin, and so we're out for lunch one day or whatever, and he was looking for investment for his mining operation, right? Because he was gonna let's sell the ATMs, let's get into mining. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna invest into your company, I really need to understand what Bitcoin is and how do we make money on this and so forth if we're gonna put an investment in there. So really, I credit him for really orange pilling me from the beginning and educating me along the way and all the way to Lightning, which I'll get into.
Yeah, okay, great. And so let's fast forward then a little bit. So where was the point where you changed over from Hyperwallet into, roughly when was that? And yeah.
Yeah, so, I was at Hyperwallet for about 4.5 years, and Albert was there for just short of that, so maybe 3 and a bit. And so after he raised some money for his mining operation, so he quit Hyperwallet, went and did the mining full time, and did a couple of warehouses out in Canada. Right, we were in Canada, so I was in Winnipeg and found some good cheap electricity and good warehouse space. So he went and did that. I went and so this would have been early 2017. So he did that in 2016. I stayed at Hyperwallet for like another year. Then early 2017, I left. And he was like, and Bitcoin was at $1,000, and he was like, buy Bitcoin right now. Right now, you got it. You should be buying it right now. And I remember I was on vacation. I'm traveling throughout Europe, and it's going like $2,000, and then $3,000. And I'm like, and I text him. I'm like, dude, buy me some Bitcoin right now. Like, I don't know what's going on, but but later that year, so then I was trying to help him raise some capital for the mining operation, right? So me and him have kind of intertwined business activities for a while. So I was trying to help him. When I got back from Europe, I was trying to help him raise capital for this mining operation. And then what happened was then later that year, so in December of 2017, myself and 2 other partners opened up basically a Bitcoin bank. It was like a Bitcoin brokerage / bank. It was literally a physical location in Vancouver where you could walk in, and we had tellers and we had offices, and if you wanted to buy face-to-face with cash, you could go visit one of our tellers, or if you wanted to do a larger transactions, you came to the office, and we did an OTC trade. So yeah, so basically did that, and he did the mining stuff, and when that was over, then he was very early into Lightning as well.
Yeah. And so then you were doing the OTC stuff, and then, as I understand, did you wind that business down, or you sold it? Or
Nope.
It's still running?
It's still operating today, right? So there was the 3 co-founders. I sold my equity, and I was kind of like thinking about what I was going to do next. I was actually in the middle of creating another startup for myself, right? So I was in the middle of development on that. And Albert, and I had come and I had visited him in Vietnam, and so we were hanging out in Vietnam, and I came home and anyway, he reached out to me, or somehow we connected. Well, we've always been friends, so we pretty much chatted every couple of weeks, right, in terms of like, how's it going? And there just so happened to be an opportunity where he was like, I'm looking for, as Muzz was saying, I was an angel investor, right? He was looking for an angel investment. So we sat down and we hashed out, I was like, well, now, if I'm going to invest into this Lightning company, I need to really, really understand what is Lightning in detail, how do we make money, how do we make this a business, and so forth. So, for basically the next 48 hours, I tried to learn as much as I could, and I obviously, he's been right many times when it came to being like with the Bitcoin ATMs and the mining, and now with Lightning, and so I thought, let's do this, right? So I'm going to put in my investment, right? So I put a sizable angel check in, and then I joined full time, right? And so it was at the time it was himself and a software developer, and then I joined the team there.
Fantastic. And so that was like pre-seed, seed, like really early stage,
Yeah.
and now here we are, right? So kind of where is Neutronpay today compared to then?
Yeah. So today, so where we were then, actually, and going off of, so kind of tying this into what Muzz's presentation was about, it was very interesting. So as soon as I cut my check, it was over, the money's deposited, and that software developer that was on our team, he quit. And so I was like, oh shit, what did I just do, right? Because he wasn't a believer, right? He didn't believe in what we were doing.
Lightning or Bitcoin or just the business?
Yeah, all the above, right? And so he kind of was like, is this company going to make it? Is it not? And so we just, we rallied together, the two of us, and got some software developers on board. I reached out to Herman, right? So our VP of engineering. So I'd met him a couple years prior, and he's a solid developer. We brought him onto the team, and basically over the course of those initial, call it 7 months, we hit the VC scene and the Bitcoin VC scene. So we actually spoke with Lightning Ventures and all the other Bitcoin VCs, and we ended up raising our seed round, right? So we raised, it's public. It was $2.25 million, and that closed in June of 2022. And now we're about, it's hard to say exactly what we are. Maybe we're like 14 headcount. We're kind of adding a little bit of bodies here and there. So we're good size. We're growing fast, and really exciting times actually at Neutronpay.
Yeah, and so obviously on the operational side, that's where your work is right now. What's it been like trying to cross this chasm, right? You've got the fiat world, and of course, there are people having issues with the fiat banking world, and you're trying to be that bridge. I'm curious what kind of challenges you're seeing, and what kind of what have been the hurdles for you?
Yeah, well, it's been great for me and Albert. I think our background, having come from a payments company, right? We already understood. So banks don't love payments companies either, right? So you would think so banks don't love Bitcoin companies or crypto companies. Okay, they also don't like marijuana companies. They don't like porn companies. They don't like multi-level marketing companies. They don't like a lot of companies. Anything that has high risk, or they deem to either have high risk as it comes to money laundering or terrorist financing, or it might just be reputational risk. They don't want to bank Smith & Wesson, or maybe they would because it makes a lot of money. But if you're like some small-time gun manufacturer, they're like, we don't want that, So working at Hyperwallet, I think, was the perfect petri dish for us, because we learned about these banking systems all over the world, right? Because we were essentially providing payments in about 200 countries around the world. So, I had about a 4.5-year, undergrad degree in payments and understanding the banking system and so forth. And like I said, we were a money services business company, which means, we couldn't get banked everywhere, right? Because there's let's say there's 100% banks in the world. There's this many banks. There's this many banks that'll bank you if you're a money services business company. And then there's this many banks that'll bank you if you're a crypto company, right? And we just lost 3 of them recently, right? So it makes it really tough. So definitely banking is definitely the biggest challenge, but there are totally many other challenges. But I really feel like Hyperwallet was the best segue, and then obviously me at my previous startup, and then leading into this, I think everything just kind of worked out, right? And it's all been like an education towards Neutronpay. Yeah.
So when it comes to the getting merchants, right? Like obviously onboarding merchants, you're trying to teach them, or at least enough to get them to be open to this idea of, oh, you know, why should they sign up with you guys, right? Like what were some of the lessons you learned along the way there in terms of getting merchants on board?
Yeah, so signing up merchants, right? So I was, so Albert in the early days was going around Saigon and signing up merchants, and then of late, so like in the last 6 months, let's call it, here in Da Nang, right, is where I was, signing up some merchants and having some failures and having successes and so forth. And I haven't been here full time, right? But I think we're going to ultimately end up hiring a person to just do that job, right? But it's good. You want to learn it, so you understand the difficulties that it is, so you can teach them, how you can win and what pitfalls to stay out of. But it's Lightning. I don't lead with Bitcoin, right? I don't lead with Bitcoin. That's like I said, immediately they're on their heels and they're like, I don't want to accept Bitcoin. Why would I accept a Bitcoin payment? So definitely, like as you guys were chatting about yesterday, I forget what panel it was, but it's all about Lightning, right? Like it's hey, it's or an international QR code payment, right? Because QR code payments here are super commonplace, right? Yeah, in Canada or North America or Europe, nobody pays with QR code. It's not normal, right? But in Asia, our big advantage is the fact that QR code payments here are the primary way they pay with a digital payment. So the fact that you're, introducing them to an additional QR code payment, which is maybe more for an international person as opposed to a local, because it's really hard to like convince a local person who already has a solution to use your platform, right? But if you can convince them like, hey, you know what, this is probably a better solution than you swiping a Visa card for allowing your, your out-of-country, customer, I think it's probably a better solution. So that's kind of what we've been finding.
Yeah. And on that, I'm curious if you could give just an estimate, I mean, even just in your experience, what kind of percent would you say people use cash here versus, let's say, credit card versus QR code, but like fiat QR code?
Yeah, so I would say, cash is still pretty heavy for sure. Cash is definitely, I'd still say number one, right? But like here in Vietnam, the big, obviously in America, you can say, you have like the Cash Apps and the Venmos and the PayPals. Here you have what's called Momo or Zalo Pay. They also have Viet QR, which is like the countrywide QR code standard, right? So it's quite common, right? And so what people do here is, especially smaller merchants, right? And when I mean smaller merchants, I mean like even merchants that have like up to 10 employees, they don't open up a business account, right? So they'll still use their personal account for their business, right? Like an entrepreneur, right? And so
we're talking, to be clear, we're talking like a personal Momo account.
Business. They're using their personal account. So if you guys, so I know we've been tied up with a conference for the last 48 hours, but tomorrow, if you guys aren't flying out in the morning or whatever, I really highly recommend you guys walk through the neighborhoods and just kind of like take a look at their countertops, right? So you'll see that they have multiple QR codes at their till, right? So you'll see a Viet QR code, you'll see a Momo QR code, you'll see a Zalo Pay QR code, and like you'll see like their personal QR code, their personal bank account QR code. They're making it public, right? And it was funny because the other day I was chatting with a woman at a coffee shop and I was trying to get her to use Neutronpay, and she's like, well, I don't trust this app. I don't want to download this random app. And I said, well, just yesterday you told me that some random dude came in here and paid you with Wise and you gave them all your bank account information. So I'm like, you gave that guy all your bank account information, but you won't download this app. So anyway, it was kind of funny. She ended up coming around the next day. But yeah, so QR codes, I would say, I don't know this. I'd have to look up exactly the stats, but cash definitely number one, and then QR code payments like number two. Credit cards and stuff are definitely way lower if you can even qualify for one, right?
That's interesting, right? And to your point, in the Western world, credit cards are the dominant. People do tap to pay, or they have like their phone and they're tapping. They've got Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, that kind of thing, or Google Pay. But here it seems QR codes, right? So at least, as you're saying, there's this reduced friction because people already kind of comfortable with doing a QR code to pay. So there's at least that. So let's talk a little bit about that aspect, because we've got Bitcoin Beach Da Nang. So what's the, firstly, what is that and what's the goal?
Yeah, so it was back in I think like October. I love what Bitcoin Beach. Obviously, I saw El Salvador is doing, and I saw like the Bitcoin, Bitcoin Mountain and the Bitcoin Lake and all these other communities. And we're based here in Vietnam, and I mean I kind of float around, but I was like, I want to create a Bitcoin Beach community here in Vietnam, and I thought, well, where better to do it than Da Nang? Like I think it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I love the neighborhood. I love this beachfront. I love this area. Hence the reason why we also are doing the conference here, right? So that took place probably back in October, and it's still like in its infancy stages, right? Like I'm sure some people follow the Twitter account, and a lot of people maybe heard about this conference through the Bitcoin Beach Vietnam Twitter account. So we're still I'm trying to find the right people to really, continue onboarding more merchants, but not just about onboarding merchants, but really trying to create a community. So in the last, 3 weeks that I've been here, I've been, just finding even more people who might want to participate in this. So it's still in its earliest days with good intentions, and obviously we want to onboard merchants and get something that will, because like I said, I'm kind of a digital nomad right now. So as much as I'd love to be in Da Nang full time, I can't, and so I kind of need somebody to kind of take that initiative. If anybody's in the crowd who wants to help, let us know. There we go. That's right. There we go. That's right. Yeah, we talked about this the other day. So, I'd love to have help on that and continue that.
Yeah, and I think to that point, if you look at Bitcoin Beach and El Zonte, they have people who are on the ground. They have community leaders, whether they are organizing regular meetups, whether they're walking around trying to get new merchants on board, and also facing out to the rest of the world and showing, oh, look, here's the merchants we have, and here's some videos of people, seeing is believing, right? So, of course, it's great to have a community and try to grow that community. So, just for people to get an idea, are you able to say, like, roughly how many merchants there are today?
Oh, geez. Honestly, right now we're at like 10. Yep. I won't lie to anybody. Like, we're at 10. I'm the one who personally onboarded those 10. And I'm trying to do that, juggling a full-time job, trying to put on the conference, and then trying to sign up these merchants. So it's been tough, and hence the reason why I need to like literally dedicate. We need somebody who like this is their job, and so we need help.
Yeah, sure. And so I presume it's coffee shops, bars, this kind of thing. And so it's obviously perfect for tourists. If you're a Bitcoin tourist, I think that's maybe part of the pitch is, hey, if you've got Bitcoin and you want to travel, this is one place you could go. And potentially, like yourself, digital nomads, right? And I know Albert was mentioning, is there another part of town where like a lot of digital nomads hang out, or they kind of live there and work there? Maybe that's another opportunity.
Right here, like literally right where we've been having those beach parties at night that we've been going to. That's the neighborhood. So it's called Myan, right? Like MYAN. So that's like the digital nomad neighborhood. Super cool vibe, like amazing people, amazing restaurants, amazing coffee shops. Like everyone's working from there. So that's kind of where I've been hanging out these last 3 weeks, like in preparation for the conferences. So pretty much every day, like I'm kind of, choosing a different coffee shop to work from, and in the process, right? Like, so I hang out at the coffee shop, I stay there for a while, and then I befriend the owner. Then then some of them say yes, like, I want to spend sats where I hang out. You know what I mean? Like, so all the places where I go, whether it's the gym or my favorite coffee shops, I'm like. So that's where I've had the early successes, like the places where I've been frequenting the most because they trust. They're building trust as well, right? So they've seen my face. I've eaten there a few times. I've worked there for a couple days, and they go, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And then I kind of, some of them I wasn't even trying to pitch. It was just they're like, "Well, what do you do?" Because you've been here all day, and I'm like, "Well, this is what I do." And if you really wanted to accept sats, I mean, we could sign you up. And they're like, "Yeah, let's do that." So sometimes it's actually them. They've wanted to help. And so that's been actually quite nice as well.
Yeah, and of course having a regular meetup scene can help, right? Because you can sort of have the meetup go to that cafe or that bar and then spend sats there. So they're getting something out of it too. Because I think, if I think back to 2013, 14 days, there were people kind of yelling at restaurants or things to take Bitcoin, and then what happened is not enough people went there and actually spent there. So then they kind of forget, and then they're not regularly taking, Lightning. And that said, I think it is also worthwhile pointing out that if you're using Lightning first, it's a slicker experience, right? And I know at times in El Salvador, there have been, as an example, sometimes the merchant POS there defaults to Bitcoin on chain, and then it's a pain because you're sitting there, especially if it's like, I'm paying you right now, and then there's people in the line behind who are waiting for this confirmation, and things like this. So having a more Lightning savvy experience, it's a lot slicker, right? So that's good to see. Let's talk a little bit about how the conference came up as well. So, this is a first-time conference. Obviously, any first-time conference, it's a bit, difficult to get the traction because people may not know the conference, they may not know you guys, so it takes a bit of continued effort. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how it came about?
Yeah, no. So its initial probably discussion was like in June of last year, May or June of last year. And I remember looking around at all the different conferences, right, that I wanted to attend, and I noticed that there was none. There was no Bitcoin or Bitcoin Lightning, especially one in Asia. Obviously you had El Salvador. This is a pretty new phenomenon, right? Like there were no Lightning conferences until like El Salvador adopting Bitcoin in 2021, right? So and then obviously Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin Miami got rejuvenated after the COVID, and so we kind of, after we raised our money, we were like, okay, we have a budget here. We could probably put one together, but we were kind of sitting on our hands for a bit, and then basically in October, we kind of came together. So us and Bitcoin VN and Nunchuck, and we kind of all chatted, and we're like, I think we should do this. Like, if we're trying to be the leader in Southeast Asia when it comes to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Lightning companies, we want to, take that step forward to kind of put on an event and welcome. I really want to welcome as many people as possible from around the world, from Europe and North America and elsewhere, to really come to the country where, as you've seen, Vietnam has a high penetration of crypto adoption and Bitcoin adoption, and we just kind of really wanted to. We just wanted to welcome people into our backyard, and into our home, and put on an event that people enjoyed, and see how beautiful Vietnam is, right? Because I think Vietnam is one of my favorite places to travel, and I just really wanted people to kind of see it with their own eyes, and then and walk away hopefully happy with the conference and happy with the city, and ideally we make this a yearly event. So that's kind of the idea here.
Yeah, so this could, and it was interesting because there was the Lightning conference in Berlin, October 2019, but then that kind of shut down for a little bit, and then all the the COVID hysteria stuff happened, and they were going to do another one this year. Then that one didn't come through, and then so in the end, this ended up being the Lightning conference of the year, right? And especially good to see more Bitcoin events in Asia. This is something I've been chatting about with my friends, with Lewis and with Jack as well, saying it's kind of very crypto in Asia, and we'd like to see more Bitcoin events. And for me, even for myself, that's partly why I was interested to come, because I wanted to see more of a Bitcoin scene here in Asia as well. So it's great to see that. And do you have any reflections on how the conferences come so far? Anything that you would look at for next year to change?
Yeah, I definitely think starting earlier. I mean, obviously, we made the announcement in October, and so we've been hard at work trying to get this thing ready for everybody. And obviously, we all have full-time jobs doing our daily thing. So to add on those extra hours to do this has been challenging, especially when we have a small team. Bitcoin VN has a small team, and so. It's been a lot of work, but I'm super grateful for everybody having come here. It's been amazing. I'm proud of the event that we've put on, but now that we've built the infrastructure for year one, it'll be much easier to do for year two. But definitely some learnings are talk to sponsors earlier, and talk to them before the market goes to shit, so they still have money to put into the conference. So the three sponsors at the top, we're the ones footing the bill, and no one else opened up their purse books because they're like Malcolm, dude, we have no marketing budget for 2023, and I was like, okay, sounds good. You know what I mean? So don't throw a conference in. So this year might be tough for anybody else that's trying to get any sponsors for events. It's a tough year. Marketing budgets are like razor thin. So those are, I think, the basic learnings, definitely.
On the good side, what do you think really went well? Like, what would you kind of point to and say, yeah, I think we got that part right?
Yeah, I think we did a good job of, and I thank Dominique so much for this, and we were chatting about it just before this, is that getting the right people, like getting the right speakers, getting the right content on the stage, like just so you guys know, like, a lot of work was put into, getting the right people to come and attend here, because we didn't want to just put on some event, right? Like, we like to put forth the best product possible, whether that's at Bitcoin Vienna or Neutronpay or Lightningcon, right? So, we put a lot of effort behind getting the right people here. We reached out to literally everybody, right? And some people were too busy, right? And some people it's expensive to fly around the world to get here, so we get that, right? So hopefully next year even more big names and big companies, and we want even more Lightning representation. But I think I'm very proud of what we've done so far.
That's cool. So look, I think we've got a couple minutes left. We'll see if there's any questions from the audience. So anyone got questions for Malcolm? Hands up. I've got one there. Got a microphone runner.
The traveling mom with the 4 kids. Yes, let's get that one. Let's get a question over here. She has a very interesting story, by the way.
Microphone.
Sleeping on the job. That's okay. Keep texting.
Thanks. What I wanted to ask you, Malcolm, is if you're around over the weekend, you should come down to Anbung Beach. And I've got lots of friends with restaurants and cafes, and I'd love to watch you in action, so then I can duplicate and help you to do that for the next 2 months while I work digital nomad life with my kids in cafes, and hopefully by next year when I come back, I can spend my pay at all of these cafes, because I like Anbung Beach. There's a big density of expats down there. So if you're around, I'd be down to watch you, even if it's for just an hour, on how you work on these people and help you to get this Neutronpay. Then I can help you also in New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Is that near Hoi An? Is that
yeah,
where?
It's 20 minutes down the road.
20 minutes? Okay, yeah. No, 100%. I fly out Sunday late afternoon. I will 100% come down there and show you and help you out. And yeah, the more help we can get, the better. So 100% I'm in.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for helping. In the front, right? You still have a question? Yeah.
Thank you. How is Vietnamese people investing in Bitcoin? Do they prefer more indirect way or just using exchange to buy Bitcoin?
Well, I would say, so the question is how are Vietnamese people investing in Bitcoin? Well, we're not a Bitcoin exchange, right? Bitcoin Vien, they're the person to answer that question. I mean, since 2013, he's been the number one broker in Vietnam. So, do you want to answer this? Dominique, get up here. Dominique can answer this question like really well. We're a Lightning company.
So centralized exchanges like ours are actually quite difficult to run here because the way how the money is moving here. Most of them buy generally like P2P, so that could be either like some centralized solutions like you have these Binance, Huobi and so on platforms, but also like Telegram chats, Yalo chats, basically just P2P. That's where the majority of the market is. Centralized exchanges like ours is that it's not easy to keep it running here because there's a lot of money laundering groups outside Vietnam which try to move the money out of Vietnam. And you need to look very carefully where the money is coming from because, that otherwise could bring you in quite a bit of trouble. We have our experience there as well. But, it's mostly P2P. I would say the volume largely over 90% is just people trading with each other, which makes for a very resilient market, especially if they move out of like these centralized P2P providers. And there's a lot of trading happening just in chat groups. So there's not much the government can basically attack if they would want to shut off the on-ramps, just because there's so many people trading and so much liquidity in the market.
One last question, Adam, and then we'll move on to the next speaker, because I'm still trying to keep a tight ship here.
Yeah, thanks for the interview. Yeah, so in Malaysia, I've gotten like a lot of inquiries from charities rather than merchants because I mean
Charities?
Yeah, from charitable organizations, since when they're not concerned about volatility. I mean, as long as they get something, it's like better, right? So like I onboarded like at least one zakat platform. It's like a crowdfunding platform and then they take that Bitcoin and then liquidate it, and then they distribute to their charities. So so in Vietnam and like rest of Southeast Asia, do you think it's a good fit since we do it's like a lot of organizations?
Sorry, what was the question though?
Yeah, is it a good fit to onboard like a Bitcoin payment gateway for charities? Is it like a good target?
For Neutronpay or?
Yeah, for Neutronpay and in general.
Okay, so I'll try and answer that best I can. So from a crowdfunding. So we're more, I mean, we do pay-ins and we do payouts. So as of right now, like Malaysia, probably not the best fit, right? We're not regulated in Malaysia. I mean, who knows what the future may hold, right? Over the years. But so it's kind of hard to answer that now. But when the time comes, we can have a conversation. But let's pretend that question, and it was a Vietnamese company or a Canadian company or somewhere where we're regulated. Then yeah, I mean, we could definitely help out on the acceptance side, and also they would probably need to distribute out funds as well to the charity organization. So yeah, we could. So technically, the answer is yes. Like what Jeremy from Swan this morning said. Can we build this? So 100%. The answer is, from a sales perspective, is yeah, we can help you. It's just there's other like regulatory things that we need to kind of figure out too.
And interestingly, and I'm sure you're aware of this as well, is a lot of the banks have their own money laundering risk assessments, and charities come up as high risk on those. So then there is a difficulty to deal with that aspect.
Yeah, for sure. We just like how banks have their high risk profile to low risk profile, when we're onboarding customers, we have a KYC department where we're like, we won't touch them either. You know what I mean? Like, so we have a higher risk to low risk, right, as well. So, but I mean, nevertheless, I mean, charities right now could use peer-to-peer. I mean, there's nothing stopping them. They could just use cash and go buy Bitcoin and use it to fund their, journalists or people who are helping them. So there's all kinds of peer-to-peer aspects of that. Not every service is able to serve every person. And, as much as we want Bitcoin to be about, open for everyone, the reality is operating in the regulated system, it's not always possible. So, yeah. All right, well, I think that's pretty much it. We shall move on to the next one. So everyone put your hands together, and thanks, Malcolm.